Here in attendance is Derek, representative from Molten Bean, to outline and give you a short PowerPoint presentation.
Good evening. Thanks for letting us present this here tonight. I guess this project has been a roller coaster here. This is amendment number 7. As noted in the amendment letter that was provided in the council packet 2. Like I said, this project's been a roller coaster with different internal and external factors. As noted, some of them with the different funding eligibilities, right-of-way acquisition needs, etc., that we've discussed in other previous amendments. So this project does have a lot of background, and I'm going to try to go through this at a reasonable pace. But if there is any issue or areas that you would like to know more details about, let me know, and I certainly can share them. So I guess what we're presenting tonight is, just seeking seeking fair compensation for our services that our budget has gone over for this project. Again, with all these factors listed in that amendment letter. So kind of what I want to hit on tonight, just some quick background of where we left off at the last amendments 5 and 6. Talk about the existing situation that we have, because a lot has changed over the last year. The work completed to date that's been under the city's direction or guidance. Project work that's expected here in 2023 and is in motion as we speak. Other tasks that we see as a future need, and then just go through what the impacts are to the current project budgets, both the Foley Road project and the 210 Inglewood project. So just hit some quick background here. So back in April 2022, we came to the table here and stated that with all this additional scope, etc., then we need to seek some funds for construction administration. There was some other design items, and then there was the construction materials testing that we had to go through and approve, since in the RFP that was stated that would be negotiated at a later date, which was then. So at the request of the city staff, we split that into 2 amendments. Number 5 was not controversial but time-sensitive items, because we had to get those approved before the construction of Foley Road. Amendment number 6 did need a lot more negotiation discussion at the time. We had also had a special work session as well with the Utilities Commission, and that one did drag on to August 16th, 2022. So just want to kind of understand that time frame there too. Because some of that background was, more, if you look in the RCA as part of the city council packet, that at the Utilities Commission, there was just some concern or needed some justification as to why a lot of this wasn't presented at the time, or even made known in the fall or fall of 2022. So first off, back in April 2022, when we sought the additional compensation and out-of-scope items, we kind of based it on exactly what we knew at the time, which we were just going off projections of what were needed on the construction administration staff, survey staff, what we had for the plans of the funding eligibilities at the time. That has changed, and just the status of the project, and then the other external factors of that I'll kind of just touch base on later on. But some of the reasons too why we didn't bring a lot of this up until January, February of this year to city staff was, first off, a lot of or a misunderstanding of some of the RCAs, that when we do provide those project backgrounds and budget items, we assume that it was just needed for what has been approved, and not for the engineering budget of not to exceed this amount, that with construction, it's essentially black and white. That's likely gonna be spent, and then additional change orders will increase the price, where with ours, engineering can be a little more gray into, I guess, what can be, projected or not, and that's where we did not put these in the RCA updates, because we understood at the time that, it was, engineering just wanted to be what has been approved to date. So, we spoke about that at the Utilities Commission, that, if this is gonna be approved, that any notion or any, possibility of additional funds will immediately be brought to the table in a project update in the future. Another reason then, why a lot of it was not brought up to the table earlier, was we didn't have that area in the summer, fall, where we do have that overlap between the projects, where we thought we could make up a lot of time, because we have one service staff on site and one construction administrator, inspector on site, that we thought at that time we could try to make up a lot of that cost at the time. It ended up being a little more headache where that, fully know what area is, because one reason is because the staging changed with the railroad and how we wanted to pave Foley Road, so there wasn't necessarily a joint, a final joint between the two projects on the intersection. And then also, the Knollwood project also came about on that southern leg, so we had to, redesign that southern leg as well, to adapt to that project that's going on right now. Also, when we were talking Amendment 6, we didn't necessarily want to bring up additional funds during the negotiation, and our assumption was, let's get through this 2022 construction year, see where we are for projections, also look at inflation rates at the time too, which I'll touch base a little bit, and then just evaluate where we are within our budget and where we are sitting as a project during the downtime in the winter, and then seek this additional amendment, which we're talking about now in 2023, was the thought. So I just wanted to hit on that, which was, I guess, probably the most feedback we received from the Utilities Commission. But the other background then at the time that is just should be of note is the city was planning to use 1.4 million in state aid funding, and the federal funds were only 603,900 at the time. So we had those locked in. Those were approved at the assessment hearing, held in August. And then we just, for the construction administration, we estimated 45 per week, which is about average. And then again, we thought that we could have that benefit of the overlap between the projects as well. And then in that Amendment 6, we did have a section on there, stating Bolton makes a commitment to the project, and also the items that should not be, bore under the response or the responsibility of the city with the right-of-way negotiation, where the right-of-way agent and appraiser ended up taking too long, that we ended up going a different route on that one, and then our project management changes. And then lastly was the inflation rates. So kind of the underlying issue that we have been having in our budgets and our tasks is this project was bid in 2019, so we had our 2019 rates. The RFP stated the project was gonna be done in 2021, so we were only planning for a 2019-2021 construction timeframe, well, design and construction timeframe. Now we're sitting here in 2023, project doubled. As everyone knows, the economy has, and inflation rates have increased, almost 6+% over the last 3 years. We haven't had that chance to, I guess, recoup or revise our billing rates, which I state some of the billing rates in the amendment letter, that they have gone up a lot over the years. And I guess from a city's perspective, most projects are 1 to 2 years, even construction are 1 to 2 years. And even in construction contracts, there's a clause there that if inflation rates do go higher, above a certain threshold, the contractor can seek additional compensation for those inflations. So I guess just one thing I wanted to note that is an underlying issue that we've been having within our tasks, because we're spending budgets at that higher rate of inflation. So now just moving on to the existing situation or that we had dealt in the fall. So after that Amendment 6, then the city was awarded, or I guess I should say back up, MnDOT approached us to say, hey, they have additional $650,000 in federal funds that can be applied to this project. And so at the time, Bolton Bank was requested to evaluate what that would do to the federal funding of the project, because there also was a feeling or a notion that MnDOT was kind of forcing these funds on this project because they would also benefit from it. So we had to reallocate the funds, look at, okay, the federal or the eligibilities between each particular sub-area of the project and how that impacted the ultimate responsibilities between the city and MnDOT. But it did still benefit the city, and that's why we awarded those $650,000, but it was, work that we had to redo again and reevaluate, even though we had that all set when we did the job in early August.
So how much more is in this fee amendment for that $650,000?
To evaluate a lot of that would be, what task is that? I think that's task 20.
What was your question?
I want to know how much in the fee amendment that's being presented was a result of the $650,000.
Yeah, so that is the task 24A. So task 24A is 18,000 essentially, 17,959. Excuse me, to be exact, of what we're seeking to evaluate those funds that the city, well, evaluate the funds and also just evaluate what does that do to the internal funding practices of the city between the state aid funds, the bonding, the assessments, and also is there any stipulations, since federal funds, there's a lot of red tape that comes with that. We had to look through that. So I listed a couple bullet points in that task of management of the three federal, or actually management of the three funds. So yes, we were receiving the federal funds at $650,000, but we had to reevaluate the city funds, state aid funds, and the state funds all in one.
But that was $18,000.
That was 18,000. Yep.
So is there a big ticket item in this amendment that, accounts for the almost $300,000?
I'd say the biggest ticket item is probably, the 210 Englewood plan set revisions and specs. That one was 54,000 with all the different plan revisions that we had to go through, which is this sheet here. That was part of the packet. So that one was 54,000, and then what we're seeking for the projections of this construction year coming up, that one is 90,000. So that's
to finish out and be done with the project.
correct. Yep, and that's where that 90,000 is based off of, which I have that projected graph in the packet, of how fast, we were spending the budget being on site, from the contractor being present and kind of, what was expected by the city staff for us to be there. So, I mentioned earlier that in Amendment 6, we were using 45 hours per week estimated. We were roughly 50 to 55 hours on the field at the time. So we expect that same rate to happen this year as well. So that's where we came up with that 90,000 projection.
Okay, so that's like $160,000 $160,000 of the three. All the rest of it's just smaller miscellaneous things.
Yep, yeah, so this one's 30,000 there, 30,000 there, 30,000 there, exactly, then it's, and then, yeah, the as-built and, the potential auditing support, it's 5,000 and 6,000, so, and then the extended management time, that one's, 30,000, so, yep, so, the two heavy hitters were the 210 plan revisions and then the construction administration and observation request, so. Anything further on that? Okay. So that third bullet point there, as I mentioned, I think in November, December, the city's, I think it was WSN, to complete that Noah Drive project. We had to work around that, design, and construction timeline since that was this year. Foley Road project has been substantially completed, in late November. In the task for construction administration of Foley Road, that one, it extended 2.5 weeks roughly than what we were planning, because we were planning to be done, end of October. And then we're seeking some, I think it's just like $8,000 for this year, because Arnold Larson has to do some project closeouts and punch lists, which they actually just did some, today with, some of the concrete and, seeding items. So that's that project. The 210 project, Anderson Brothers completed a third of it last year, and then now this year, I guess the rest of the 2/3. This one, I won't really elaborate too much. It's just kind of a timeline of how, the funds, I guess, went about through this project. Maybe the one item that I'll highlight, maybe the last three. So, like I stated before, the city was originally seeking 1.4 in state aid funds. After receiving additional federal funds, it was lowered down to about 1.1 is what we needed for the project. In October, the city requested that we ask for advancement of funds, so essentially state aid would give us that money up front, even though it's not necessarily spent, and that was needed for cash flow. And at the time, we only received $1.2 million, which that's what said that was eligible. November 2nd, that one was just, we had to amend the cooperative agreement, which is with MnDOT, and that has the state and federal aid details on how the project is supposed to be broken out. And again, we had to do that because of receiving that additional $650,000. And then so last month, when we were talking funding and budgets with the city, we were questioning why a lot of the state aid eligibility isn't there, because MnDOT is being cautious to make sure that we aren't essentially double dipping, because we have all these different funding sources. You can't, if you're paying in one area of federal or state funds, you can't also extract state aid funds to pay for those same things, because it's already being paid by something else. So they thought the city was paying for the design, engineering, construction, administration, by their 8%, I guess, cost participation policy rule. And that's where we said, no, the city areas that are non-state or federally eligible, those areas are strictly being paid by the city. So we essentially questioned that, and they gave us additional 25% of state aid money, which then increased our state aid eligibility to where our projections are for what we're gonna spend on state aid. So that's just a stipulation there that we had a point where we didn't think we were gonna get the state aid funds that we were needing to fund the project, where now state aid has admitted that, yes, you guys should get that 25% of engineering. So just wanted to hit that one. So work completed to date, that we have spent, I mentioned before, we had summaries of the plan changes, of Foley Road plan changes, and the 210 plan changes. And I guess I'll quickly highlight that typically you do have some budget in there for plan revisions. This one, for many reasons, we had a good amount of plan changes. I mentioned the 210s with all some of the staging in the Millwood project. I can go through those too, but I'll skip it if just for time's sake. And then the project financial plan and management at 24, B of seeking the additional federal funds, the financial amendment between the parties, which I mentioned happened in November, and the advancement of payments for the city's cash flow that we were requested to provide and obtain. This is just kind of the breakdown of what it takes to do a change order and a plan revision on a project like this, which we knew this was gonna be the case when we bid the job. But we didn't know that we were gonna have to do it so many times, which I list, we had to do that 6 times on this project. And it's just a pretty cumbersome process because you have so many parties involved. It's not, say, a typical city project where you just have to consult with the city and the 2 parties agree and you're good to go. Here, you unfortunately have to run the plan changes through MnDOT, through state, federal aid, make sure it meets all their standards, make sure, we're not hiding anything, get the approvals there, then you have to get their approvals of the federal eligibilities, make sure that, we're not, adding another pipe of water main on the project that MnDOT's gonna pay for, they're gonna say no to that one, but it's areas that are eligible for that negotiated. So just saying that the reason for all these, or from all these plan changes, it's a pretty, I guess, time-consuming process is what I'll state. And a question you had, Mark, at the Utilities Commission was, I brought this slide up here because this is from the original feasibility study, where you can see they had, well, essentially 4 funding areas. Really, I could say it's 2, the red and the orange and the gray were, here they're based off of the construction type with MnDOT on what is eligible, what's not. So that, which was part of the amendment from the RFP. And again, here you can see how this area was split up. And also that, to note that RCI was added as part of the project, which was not in the RFP. But I think that was like Amendment 4 that we were compensated to design that RCI. But again, that was another funding category that we had to deal with for this project. So I just continued the work to complete it to date. I mentioned that last year's Foley Road construction went over 2.5 weeks from what we projected. The hours were a lot more. And then one thing I will note, added to our $165,000 that we wrote off in Amendment 5. The RFP, the individual that was supposed to be out there in 2021 was no longer available in 2022 just because of the delays. And then 210 project, $5,000 was spent last year, paying off that extended project management time. Then just some of our budgets will pan out through here, pan out to build construction as responsible. So in the amendment letter, which then based off the current projections would leave the project with $56,000 left over in budget on that one. I do mention there's additional $69,000 contingencies for this engineering count that this year, or I say last year, the areas that were constructed by Anderson Brothers were majorities